the SA government is finalizing proposed legalization that sets new rules for the two-pot retirement system. Now, this system will allow South Africans to access 1/3 of their retirement savings while still working. Members of the public have until the 15th of July this year to comment before the bill becomes law. Now, will this benefit workers really? To unpack this, we're joined by One Life Money coach Hayley Parry. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, Hayley. And I suppose the immediate reaction the average South African would have to this kind of announcement and to engaging on the bill becoming law next year would be, thank you, we need the money, we want to pay off debt, we want to do this and that. But if you think about it, it probably isn't the best idea, because it might mean you're going to have to work longer than your intended age 65, for example.
Yeah, so, what we know at the moment is the current South African stats say that 94% of South Africans reach retirement age and need to stop working and cannot. They simply cannot afford to. And so what this legislation is trying to do is to try and prevent that. The Actuarial Society of South Africa reckons that this new two-pot system that is being proposed will actually triple the retirement savings of South Africans. So anything that's going to help us have more money at retirement will be better. What we've seen happening in the past is people resigning in order to access some of their retirement funds, or when they resign, accessing them just because, they need the money. And so what they are trying to do here is to try and keep most of it for when you do actually genuinely retire. But if there is a dire need for you to access some of those savings now, this is what this legislation has been put in place to do, in order to allow people, as a last resort, to access a small portion of it now.
What do we understand about the withdrawal process? We do know that people will have access to 1/3 and the 2/3 remaining will be left for retirement age. But that withdrawal process, Hayley, what do we understand about how that will work after it's been passed into law?
So in terms of the withdrawals, what they're saying is that after the period to comment, which is now up until July, that the new two-pot legislation will come into effect from March 2024. And I think at that point, they'll give us details around the withdrawal. However, there are actually two parts to what they're proposing in this law. So depending on the type of retirement fund you contribute to, there are actually two different sets of rules. So if, for example, you contribute to a defined benefit fund, then you will have access to 1/3 of your retirement savings during the course of your career, and you will be forced to keep the remaining 2/3 for retirement. However, if you contribute to a retirement fund, or you're a member of a retirement annuity, then the rule is slightly different. And that rule says that you will be able to access 25,000 Rand or 10% of whatever you have saved for your retirement, whichever is the lesser amount, not more, because, again, they're trying to encourage you to keep most of your money that you've put aside for retirement for your actual retirement. So there is a distinction between the different types of pension fund or retirement annuities that people have, and that often depends on whether you're contributing as an individual or your company takes money off your salary and puts it aside for you. Those naming conventions, everyone would need to understand what their personal retirement strategy is and what the name of the different investments are that they are putting their retirement savings into.
Now, Hayley, of course, we have to take advantage of the fact that you are a money coach, and of course you are sharing ways in which people can navigate the little that they do have in the current economic times. So should one decide to withdraw a portion of their retirement money that has been saved over the years, what would you advise they be spending it on? Because others would use it for immediate expenses and needs, whereas one would think you want to be paying off debt that has kind of held you by the throat for a while and the like.
So I mean, that's a fantastic question, because the reality is that if you are accessing some of your retirement savings now, it probably, as a last resort, it probably means that your financial situation is not ideal at the moment. You know, perhaps someone's been retrenched, perhaps there's been some kind of emergency. Whatever it might be, my first tip, my first piece of advice is please get yourself a financial education so that you can manage the money you do have to the best of your ability. And, you know, this is a lifelong thing. We all have to learn how to manage our money because we're going to be managing it from the day we start working until the day we die. So we may as well get good at this life skill, right? So that would be my first tip. If you have never been taught or intentionally learned how to manage your money, please make that your first step. Once you've done that, you also have a better understanding about what your immediate needs and problems are. You know, the idea is you want to be able to stop working at your retirement age, for example. But one of the biggest things that stops most South Africans from doing that, as you mentioned, in fact, is debt. We know that for every 1,000 Rand in take-home pay that the average South African earns, 760 Rand of that is spent servicing debt. So if, for example, you have accessed some of your retirement funds early, if there's a way you can reduce the amount of debt that you'll be paying every month, that will obviously free up your cash flow going forward, which will enable you to create an emergency fund, put some savings aside, and ultimately start investing and working towards your retirement.
So, and then just to clarify to our viewers, so it's the two-part system, and that is the first phase, being able to access a third of your retirement funds. But there's a second phase that makes allowances for those who've been retrenched or retrenchments. Can you maybe just break that down for us? What exactly does that component entail?
So that's coming later. They are doing it in a phased approach, and I think it will probably be dependent on the comments and the feedback they get from the industry and from the average South Africans now. That is taking us up until July. Then phase one is planned to be implemented in March 2024, and then they're talking about phasing in phase two, where they're going to specifically deal with retrenchments. Because I think, you know, coming out of COVID, we saw during that period how when people have you know, dire financial emergencies and their backs against the wall, and they have this money but they can't access it because it is designed for their retirement, that there needed to be some kind of special treatment given in that scenario. And I think that is what they're going to cater for, but they want to get the basics right first.
No, thank you very much for those insights, Hayley Parry, who is the One Life Money Coach, joining us this afternoon to break down what the two-part system means, how it's going to work, and should you need to access that money, what should you be spending it on? Saying very importantly there, get financial education. Don't just spend the money because it's there in your account.